everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sarah John, and I work at Republic. We've raised $2.6 billion over the years for thousands of companies. We are able to do primary issuance that's tokenized. We have a secondary marketplace as well. So we are an integrated platform for private security issuance. It's a pleasure to be here with Mark today. Mark, for those who don't know you, do you want to give a brief intro?
Mark Yusko, I'm the CEO and CIO at Morgan Creek Capital Management. Kind of in my old life, I'm now a late in life venture capitalist. So I'm the managing partner of Morgan Creek Digital, which we set up about 5 years ago. We're raising our fourth fund focused on digital asset infrastructure, and excited to be here today.
Wonderful. Well, let's start out with where we are in the cycle. Bitcoin's up 120% this year. It seems like interest rate hikes are on pause for now. Where are you seeing where we are right now in the cycle?
We haven't even started, right? The game hasn't even started. I used to say that we were kind of in the first inning, and I realized, no, the players barely entered the stadium. We haven't even sung the national anthem. There's been a 14-year cycle that started in 1954 with the mainframe, 68 with the microchip, 82 with the personal computer, 96 with the internet. Someone earlier said, at this point with the internet, Google is dominating search and Facebook. I'm like, no. At this point in the internet, Facebook didn't exist. Google was still not in the top 10 search engines. So we are way early. But 96 was the internet, 2010 was the mobile net. 2024, which is still a couple months away, is the beginning of the truth net, which is where blockchains become the operating system for the internet of everything. And all the discussions so far have been talking about tokenization of real-world assets and all this. That's all coming. Every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every private business, every piece of art, every collectible car, everything that can be titled will eventually be on blockchains. And Bitcoin, in terms of where we are in the cycle, we're at the crypto fall, or crypto summer. Crypto fall starts next spring after the halving. That's when the fun begins for this 4-year cycle. Bitcoin runs on a 4-year cycle inside the longer cycle, but we're just getting warmed up.
You're raising your fourth fund right now, so you're having a lot of investor conversations, presumably. Do they agree with you, or
of course not.
Are they in on innovation?
We're trying to have a lot of conversations. It's better than it was. When we launched in 2018, we would call 100 people. 90 would say, don't call us back, you're freaking idiots. Of those 10 that we got to talk to, only one would invest. So we ended up with about 30 investors. In the second fund in 2020, it got 3 times better, which was still bad. So 70 out of 100 still said, don't call us back, you're still idiots. But we ended up with 90 investors. Then about 130 investors for last fund last year. And now it's about 50-50. Still about half the people we call won't even talk to us. I did a talk for the Council on Employee Retirement Benefit Plans. So 120 of the largest pools of capital in the world. I think there was like $120 trillion on the phone, the Zoom that I did. And I did a survey. Said, how much do you have in digital assets? If you have 0 to 1, 1 to 2, et cetera. If you don't have any, why? Is it you? Is it the board? Is it whatever? And then what are your plans for the future? Frighteningly, 85%, 0. And the surprising thing to me was when I asked them why, I thought they say the board, they throw the board under the bus. I'm like, nope, us, the investment team. We don't even want to recommend it to the board. Like, how can you not recommend this?
Job risk.
Yeah, job risk. But then the sadder part was 65% of them said no plans to change. And look, that's going to change. Every one of these fiduciaries, I used to say 5 years from now, but we're 3 years in, so 2 years from now, you will be deemed fiduciarily irresponsible if you don't own digital assets. And it's coming, but there's still so many people that are afraid, and it's because it's not invisible. What has to happen for the tech is for it to become invisible. Like, can anyone explain to me how you can talk into a metal and glass thing and your wife or husband can hear it on the other side of the country instantaneously? Someone explain to me how that works? No, and you don't care how it works. Maybe somebody can, but most people don't care how it works. We don't want to understand how the blockchains will work to be this operating system for the Internet of Everything. We don't need to know. What we need to know is that assets are going to settle on them, and that Bitcoin as a base layer, settlement layer, will, I believe, become the settlement layer for all assets in the world. The highest value assets will go to the most secure chain, and that's Bitcoin.
Let's just, I had another thing to harp on, but let's just sit on the Bitcoin topic for a minute, because since I know this is one that's close to your heart. Do you view all of these pending ETF applications, presumably if they get accepted at some point, do you view this generally as a positive for Bitcoin, or do you see some risk to the decentralization ethos?
Such a great question, such an important question. So on the surface, it's all good. I mean, we're talking about $30 trillion of assets controlled by financial intermediaries that right now are not allowed to own digital assets. I have a Family Harmony account for, my brother-in-law works at UBS, so for Family Harmony reasons, I have money with him, and I'm not allowed to own anything digital through UBS. It's worse. If you're a Merrill Lynch client, you can't even be a new client if you made your money in digital assets. How freaking ridiculous is that? So that's crazy. $30 trillion. When BlackRock gets approved, which they will, right? That's going to be, I think, the only one. Now, I'm hoping the other two that are ahead of them in line, 21 shares.
ARK.
And
ARK's ahead of them, I think, right?
Yeah, but that's 21 shares. That's ARK. And then, what's the second one? That's Amun, and then Bitwise. We own both. We own pieces of both of those companies. So I would hope that they get approved, but they're not gonna. They're gonna get delayed. They're gonna approve BlackRock, and it's winner takes all. It's like Top Gun. It's about combat. There's no points for second place. But on the surface, that's great. 300 billion is 1% on a asset that trades about $100 billion on a $700 billion base. It's gonna be a big move. Probably doubles the price, maybe triples the price. But that's the Trojan horse. The reality of what this is the incumbents don't like this stuff at all. And they're gonna fight because the incumbents, the banking industry, and I'm sitting in the middle of it and I should be careful because I'm gonna get knocked off, but the incumbents have had a really good run for 800 years. And for 800 years, the trust industry has been extracting frictional cost from us, the users of it, because you realize the money that you have in the bank, it ain't yours anymore. It's theirs. It's their money. And if you want to use it, you have to get permission. Like the first time I tried to buy Bitcoin, they told me, Bank of America said 14 days. Like, what do you mean 14 days? Like, didn't you read the fine print? I'm like, hell no, I didn't read the fine print. What are you talking about? Like, well, we have 14 days, and we don't like where you're sending the money, so we're going to hold it for 14 days. So now eventually they did send it, and I did get to buy the digital assets, but the point is, it's not your money for a reason, and that industry extracts $7 trillion. Oh, come on, y'all, shudder a little bit when I use the T word. $1 trillion. Like, I'll lock the doors. I'll make you sit here with us for 31,710 years. I promise that would be really unpleasant, all right? Spend $1 a second, that's 1 trillion. 7 of those babies are extracted by the banks, brokerage, insurance companies every single year for trust. That's all going away, all of it. Because the greatest invention, Bitcoin, the innovation that Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, they, although he identified once as he, so it's probably a he, probably 4 he's. But what Satoshi did is they created truly peer-to-peer value transfer. What does that mean? It means you can actually transfer value without an intermediary. Well, what does that mean? Intermediaries charge fees. If I want to send you money, I have to have a bank account, you have to have a bank account, and they charge a fee. If I want to send you Bitcoin, a couple buttons, it's done. There's no fees, it's unbelievable. And that innovation of unique digital assets on a blockchain will be used by so many industries to completely disrupt financial services the way the internet disrupted media and commerce.
Okay, well, I've heard you speak a lot about incumbents in the past and the role over various innovation cycles that incumbents play. So this was actually, let me just push back on what you said. We just heard Patrick from Northern Trust and others up here saying that they're trying to innovate. They want to disrupt themselves.
And I loved what he said. I loved what he said.
Yeah.
I don't believe it, but I loved what he said.
So I was going to ask you, what do you think the role is that and you said it was okay to ask you spicy questions. What do you think the role is that incumbents are playing in the regulatory process right now?
Okay, so look, we've all heard the quote that Mandela didn't say, but he always gets credit for it, that, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. So I wish I could remember who actually said it first, but the key is that from 2009 to 2015, first they ignore you. A bunch of nerds and geeks playing with their magic internet money, who gives a hell? Whatever, okay? Then they laugh at you. 16 to 21, they laugh at you. Bunch of nerds and geeks, look at the magic internet money, ha ha ha. When it got to about 10 trillion that was leaving the banks and going into the lenders like Celsius and BlockFi and Voyager, now we got a fucking problem, okay? That's when then they fight you started. So 2022 to 2027, then they fight you. Incumbents always fight, right? Y'all probably don't know this, that you know where the term red flag comes from? Red flag, okay? In downtown New York, right here where we're sitting, okay, when the horseless carriage came along, the horse and buggy people lobbied, which means bribed. Lobbying is just a fancy term for bribery, by the way. You know that, right? So they bribed the legislators downtown to pass the red flag law. And if you had a horseless carriage, you had to hire a human to walk in front of the car with a red flag so everyone could see you coming. Anyone ever seen anyone walking in front of a car with a red flag? No, of course not, because it was stupid. And every industry incumbent does the same thing. Right? The train industry passed out pamphlets saying if you got on an airplane, you would die. They said your body would cave in on itself if you went a certain miles per hour. Silly. So the phone industry, AT&T and Verizon, I shouldn't name names, but they paid huge amounts of money to Washington to try to get a bill passed. Al Gore invented the internet. He didn't actually invent the internet, but he saved the internet. He actually cast the vote that defeated the bill that would have made the internet illegal. You would not have been allowed to do voice over IP if AT&T and Verizon would have had their way, because they like charging $3 a minute. So the incumbents today, their role with regulation, to answer your question, is they're fomenting it. They are creating the regulatory backlash. The choke point 2.0 is real. If you want to go down the rabbit hole with me sometime, just call me. I still use a phone. And it's so real because they can't innovate. They can't disrupt themselves because they've already been disrupted. And the way, if you ever watched Mr. Robot, which I don't even like to recommend it because it's so brutal and so violent and so kind of grotesque, but the writing is so amazing. And the story of Evil Corp, which is JP Morgan, and Bitcoin, I shouldn't say that out loud, right? But it's all real. And it's so amazing to watch that happening in real time, where you get all the people from the incumbent saying it's a fraud, it's an index of money laundering. Larry Fink said it was an index of money laundering 6 years ago. Now he gets on TV and says, you should buy my ETF to protect yourself from devaluation of your currency. And it's a safe haven like gold and treasuries. Did someone invade his body? Is this the same person? Well, of course. He isn't going to innovate. They didn't do anything except create an old world boomer collecting agency, an ETF, to gather the assets to buy this innovation in the spot market because they can, and they will. And they'll make a lot of money doing it, but the rest of us will go direct.
Okay, speaking of going direct, There's a sense emerging now that perhaps there will be sort of permanently a permissioned versus a permissionless ecosystem. And I know you think a lot about DeFi. How do you see this evolving? Will all of us eventually moved into this permissioned ecosystem, and the permissionless one is sort of a sandbox?
Man,
or
you're so good with the questions. I mean, we could talk all day about this because this is the question. And if you think about where we are, and people say, well, why would BlackRock want to get all those Bitcoin? Well, let's think about it. What's the next step? What's the Trojan horse play after they buy up a bunch of Bitcoin and they put it in this ETF wrapper, in this permission system? Then what do? You pass a bill that outlaws self-custody. You do an Executive Order 6102, modern version. So Executive Order 6102, if you don't know, on April 5th, 1933, the US government banned gold. You were now a criminal if you owned gold. And until 1975, you were a criminal if you owned gold. Why did they do that? Because they were moving away from the gold standard to make dollars less valuable. From 1776, when the dollar was invented. By the way, anyone know why it's called a dollar? Okay, because we were tight with the Rothschilds, and they called it the Rijksdollar in the Netherlands, and so we borrowed the dollar, and it's been the dollar. So from 1776 to 1913, a dollar's worth a dollar. Since 1913, a dollar's now worth 3 cents. Why? Because we created something called the Fed, which is neither federal nor has any reserves. All it does is enrich bankers. That's its job. It steals money from the poor and gives to the rich. So it's reverse Robin Hood. But all of this is going down to this permission versus permissionless. So Executive Order 6102, they didn't want you to own gold because that was the only way they could devalue the currency. So they made it illegal. Now, it's not a coincidence that Satoshi Nakamoto's birthday is April 5th, 1975. 4/5, the day of Executive Order 6102, and 1975, when gold was made legal again. It's not a coincidence. And it's not a coincidence that it was released, and I didn't wear my, I wore my history of Bitcoin stocks, but I usually wear on these kind of talks, the Genesis block, that it's not a coincidence. The first thing on the Bitcoin blockchain is a picture of the New York Post, or the London Post, the Chancellor bailing out the banks for the second time. That's not a coincidence, okay? So all of this goes back to the fact that this system will liberate that $7 trillion of rents that are being extracted, and the incumbents don't want that. So how are they going to fight it? We're going to fight it through regulation, and that regulation is going to be to try to make it illegal to do self-custody. It will fail because you can do it without their knowledge. Now, then you're a criminal, and you may have to relocate and go to some place like El Salvador or Costa Rica or Malta, which are all those are we actually went to Costa Rica to check it out, but it's pretty nice. But I think ultimately, the reason it fails is name a technology that got critical mass in the history of mankind that went back in the bottle. You can't do it. Once a good technology is released on the world, it comes out. Oh, by the way, you know why there's 21 million Bitcoin, right? 6102 is 21 with 6 zeros.
I did not know that. Okay, we have a short time left. I want to ask one final question
because I talk too much.
Related to AI, because I know you guys don't just invest in blockchain,
Yep.
but I think it's pretty cool to think about how AI and blockchain are pretty synergistic, and that an
Yep.
AI can't open a bank account, so they need to potentially earn fees some way. Potentially, this could, crypto blockchain could authenticate the identity of AI.
Yep.
Are there any companies in your portfolio that are working on this, or that are working at the intersection of AI and crypto?
I love it. I mean, we actually coined a term in our last fund, blockchain intelligence. AI and blockchain are absolutely going to be joined at the hip for exactly the reason you said, provenance and proof. In the AI world, you can't trust anything unless you can prove it is unique through the digital asset signature using blockchains. And we invest in the ABCDs of the digital age: AI, blockchain, chips, and data. Everything's about data. In the history of mankind, up until 2010, there were 5 exabytes of data. Today, we'll create 329 exabytes of data. everything is about the data, how you capture it, organize it, analyze it, and act on it. AI allows you to act and make decisions on data. Blockchains allow you to capture and organize data, and together they're unstoppable. And over time, all of that technology will create the digital asset ecosystem, and we'll all thrive.
Love it. Well, thank you. Thanks for your time today,
Thanks.
Mark.